Welcome to Sweeping the Country. I'm your host, Derek Walker. Along with me today, Mr. Jimmy Carter. Hey, Jimmy.
We'll try to lift you up today and maybe explain some of the crazy stuff that's going on. Here's something that came out while we were getting ready to roll today.
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff makes the left-hand side of the page just makes their head spin. I mean, Trump does it at least once a day, that it makes the head spin around like that little girl in Poltergeist.
I thought you were thinking of Linda Blair in
Linda Blair.
That was in Poltergeist.
President Trump announced that his administration will reverse the 2023 name changes to several military bases. They're going back to Fort Rucker. They already went back to Fort Bragg, and I think he was at Fort Bragg today, and Fort Polk and all the rest of these old names that they had.
Yeah.
7 other bases are going back to what they were.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't have any beef.
I don't like changing names. My high school changed.
It did.
My high school, my high school doesn't exist anymore in its name.
Yeah, that's sad.
And that makes me mad.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go back and change certain things. I mean, ugh.
Yeah. No,
I wish
agree.
people would be very careful when they do name things, though, to make sure that it's a name that's, not going to be politically incorrect 5 or 10 years down the road, because I really don't appreciate them changing the name. And I'm kind of glad that he changed it back.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, too.
You can go back and root some of these names. They did this and they did that. The liberal people are not in charge right now. They've been in charge. They were in charge for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
They were in charge with 8 years with Obama. You had Trump come in. He changed a lot of things, but not as many as I think he thought he could.
Mm-hmm.
But they were more organized this time when they got back. They were elected. And he's doing stuff like this because you can. Now in California, I mean, it's just seen people just go off the ledge. Here's the fact.
Okay.
You have millions, and that number is as high maybe as 21 million, maybe higher, maybe slightly lower, but somewhere in that ball game, of people who are not American citizens. They are non-citizens of the United States that came in illegally across the border. Now, some claimed amnesty, or they were looking for asylum or whatever, which we do take a certain number. But our immigration system is broken, was broken, and even more broken in the last 10 or 15 years. I think everybody agrees with that.
Yeah, I do.
But you've got places like Southern California where it's almost majority rule of people who are speaking with a Spanish accent or don't even have English as part of their dialogue.
That is interesting and probably very accurate based on what I've observed.
And you go into San Francisco and you've got a lot of people, and it's been this way for ever how long, that have a Far Eastern background.
Sure.
And, the cultures, if you go into, and there's Polish people in Chicago, and there's, all kinds of people, Haitians and Puerto Ricans heavily in New York City, and some are legal citizens and some are not. And it's somehow been under control over the years, but it got out of whack with the Mexican border. And then the fentanyl issue is a huge issue that really has been underplayed, although you've heard a lot about it recently.
Yeah. That
drug has killed, the illegal drug has killed so many people. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people. And people are buying it, people are using it, and that should be stopped. And that's one way you can attack it. And they have tried that before with Just Say No. But this is coming from the Chinese communists. They send the raw materials to Mexico. Mexico, would make butter illegal if they could. I mean, the cartels down there are going to make whatever they can make money on.
Sure.
It just happens it's fentanyl or heroin or cocaine or marijuana or whatever it is. That's what they're doing. So Trump's idea, this particular Republican Party's idea, is to stop them with full force in the Gulf, in the Pacific, with the naval forces, stop them where they can't get across in the air, and build a physical border and flood the troops where you can't come across, walk across. We're going to do it that way. Now, who knows what comes in on container ships and everything. A lot of this stuff is for show because we still get, I think they've said most of our drugs and bad things come into the country on container ships.
Sure, yeah.
And look what happened since we last talked. The Ukrainians, who people think are just, little dum-dums sitting down there below Russia, did one of the greatest fits of military brain power since the Trojan horse in Rome. Since the Japanese went to Pearl Harbor, since the Israelis did the exploding message machine things. They went in there with these containers, paid off some Russian drivers. They didn't know what they were doing. They
dropped them off. Yeah, they dropped those off.
And they dropped these things off, and they were remote controlled and in a police state.
Crazy.
And they went up there and did that. All right, so we got container ships, coming out to Yin Yang at all these places. They're not all checked. Some are checked at the dispatch place and sealed.
Well, I can tell you that years ago, many years ago, I was 18, 19 years old. I worked at an airline, which is now out of business, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just this airline. We worked as a hub in the cargo department for all these shipments that came in internationally. There were all kinds of airlines, nobody specific, I don't want to name anybody, but all these foreign airlines would come in, and they would bring all this stuff to a warehouse. And in our warehouse, we had a customs office. And when I say office, I don't mean a couple of desk chairs. I mean another warehouse. The customs office in our warehouse was probably 5,000 square feet of just cargo that was getting analyzed by customs as it came in, right? So a truck would drop off a container. The container would go into 1A. The next one would go into 1B, 2C, 3D. And they'd call for the container, and they'd say, bring them in here. And we'd bring in a shipment, let's say from Malaysia, full of rubber snakes and rubber reptiles to sell at a place like, some kind of toy store, whatever. Yeah. And they would go in and they would break these snakes in half. They'd take saws and drills and go through these rubber snakes, and they would find cocaine. They would find heroin, all of that stuff. They would go through corpses, random corpses from time to time, Jimmy, and open them up
the drugs in there.
Inside. Yeah. Goldfish, the big koi goldfish, I've seen them break apart in a big styrofoam container, a bunch of live koi, and one or two of them are dead. They break them open, and inside, cocaine. Inside the fish. And they put one dead fish in each batch, and there's 200 batches. And so, it's getting shipped over here all kinds of ways. You can't even
because it really is not worth anything. Yeah. They can send pounds and pounds and pounds, and if they can just get ounces through, they've come out okay.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So,
you're right.
This is much more complicated, but you got to do something. So they're going to go and do these ICE raids that I think are done for show in some cases, because I don't think I would start in Compton to do raids myself.
It might be a really big job.
They went, you got to be ready to go into a place like that, because it's ripe. And, that's where they've had such serious troubles over the years.
Yeah.
And here's a quote from someone: ICE raids in L.A. will continue every day for the next 4 years. But, it's like trying to count the grains of sand at the ocean.
Yeah.
You're never going to get what you're trying to get accomplished. Never. Mm-hmm. Now, how many is getting rid of certain things going to help? I don't know. We don't, we have a Congress that's all they do on the Democratic side is oppose. That's their resist, like they're going to do this week. Resist. They're not coming up with any better solutions. They just want to resist. Right. On the Republican side, they're got solutions. They don't like them, but they're at least a solution. Okay. But, we've got to sit down and say, hey, we've got these people that are from South America and Central America. They're building our buildings. They're sweeping our floors. They're making our beds in hotels, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to work out a way where those people who are currently working can stay working, because they're helping us. They're not hurting us by doing that. They're not taking the jobs of other people, because there are other people that don't want to work. And that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, sure.
They're going to fight with this current budget. If you are a healthy person, that's not some poor sick person or taking care of some poor sick person, there's a lot of people just lollygagging and sitting around.
Yeah, I wouldn't
And
disagree with
because
that.
in some cases, in their defense, there are no jobs. Although no one I had to go into a Hardee's, which is like a Carl's Jr. in the
Yeah,
West.
aren't they owned by
I
the same
went on
people?
Sunday
Yeah.
and I was going to go in, and there's a sign on the door said only two people here working today. We can't operate inside. Well, there's all kinds of jobs out there. If you could figure a way how to get some of these people to the job, that's another issue.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're all spread out in this country. We all don't live in a city where you can walk 2 blocks or take a bus for 2 blocks. It's all this stuff is really complicated. And the fighting in LA, there's okay, you're fighting because you don't want the federal people to enforce the immigration laws because you're illegal. All right. Well, why aren't you waving the American flag instead of the Mexican flag and the Honduran flag and the Venezuelan flag if you want to stay in this country so bad? You're sending out, you got
agree
bad
with that.
PR on your side.
I don't get that either. I'm
I
struggling
don't
with that whole
understand that.
thing.
Nobody understands it. How can you be sympathetic for somebody who's waving the Mexican flag while they're throwing rocks and hurting people that work for the United States government? I don't understand how you can,
At what point is that? At what? I mean, obviously it's a crime, but at what point is that? People from another country entering another country and then starting to use weapons against that country that they came into. At what point is that not considered some kind of act of war or something? I mean, I don't understand.
It's certainly against the law.
No doubt about that. There's
But
no doubt about it. But
we don't have enough jails. We're not set
Yeah,
up to
true.
be. We're not set up with stockades or anything like that. Our system is pretty strict about jails and jail cells and and how you treat people and the laws you've got to go through to that you treat people decently. And that's why the smell test didn't work very well for Trump when he sends these people down to El Salvador and puts them in basically a gulag. That was bad. I mean, I don't think that helped his cause too much to see those people, down there, where they're tied together and they've shaved their heads. And I don't know what I want to have happen, but that just didn't look right to me.
that would be my question is what is so for the people that don't want to see that, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to have a discussion in this country.
Yeah.
Cut off Laverne and Shirley reruns
For
and
a
force
minute.
the American people to discuss this stuff. What do we really want done? How do we want it done? What is acceptable and what isn't acceptable?
Well, and I'll go back to this, and this seems to get lost for some reason. I don't understand this either, why it gets lost in the shuffle, and that is the actual part that's illegal is coming here without the proper channels, right? It's coming here illegally. That in and of itself is a crime. So starting with that,
All right, well, let's back up. Start on that, though. That is, we've got people, because of communism in Venezuela
Yeah.
and other causes in Central and South America, these people they just hear that we've got free health care, we've
Right.
got
Yeah.
all this stuff. Why wouldn't they be coming here? Why wouldn't you risk your life to come to some place that Joe Biden, for one, has invited everybody to come up because, you're going to be, you come up here, we'll let you in. You go to your Uncle Charlie's house and live. You can get free health care. Your kids will go to school.
Yeah.
Everybody, we can't afford to do that. We cannot afford
no, but
to house the entire world.
But we advertised it, right? We advertised.
We advertised it because they had an insidious deal, and this is where we got to have some honesty in here.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Why did they leave the borders open? I mean, Obama they called him I think they called him the whatever in chief of getting rid of people. They got rid of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sending them back over, the
Oh, yeah.
deporter in chief.
Deported, yeah.
That's what they called him. So what was the logic of the last 4 years of just opening the border and just letting it go wide open? I mean, yeah, we need to catch the the gang members,
Yeah.
and which I thought that was what ICE was doing, but it seems to be, not exactly what they're doing. And then they've run into roadblocks where they can't send them off to the gulags in El Salvador, and they can't do this and they can't do that. So I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. And I know we can't be flying Marine helicopters at low altitude over American cities, intimidating people who are doing things. I don't know if that's a good look. We also can't have people. What we need to do is go after the people who are. I mean, I saw a woman, and she looked to be healthy, and she appeared to be white, and she was writing the four-letter word, if you CK, ICE on a government building wall. All right, where did she get the paint? Where did they get the money? Who is bringing these bricks and rocks? I saw a pallet or two of these concrete things. They were throwing them on the ground, and then they'd have all kinds of rocks, and they were using that to throw down on the police cars and stuff. Who is supplying stuff like that? And that's the people we ought to be going after if we're trying to figure out who it is. Years ago, when there used to be something in California called the Black Panthers.
I remember that.
And also there was the Symbionese Liberation Army, which was a lot of bullcrap.
SLA, they called them the SLA.
That was something
right?
else that just used a fancy name. But a lot of that funding was coming from the Chinese communists. We knew that through the CIA.
Interesting.
It makes sense, because here's the big point. If you don't understand anything else we're saying all day, the people who hate us, the Communist Party of Russia, the Communist Party of China, just to name two.
Yeah, North Korea.
Not to mention the mullahs and the other people that hate us. When they see us fighting among ourselves, they're winning.
It's a victory for them. Yeah.
They couldn't be any happier. So that's why they cyber attack. That's why they fund these left-wing outfits that are going to be protesting and hopefully violent. They hope violence, because the communists hate us. Why do the communists send all the drugs to Mexico to be done by the cartels? Because they want to poison our children. They want to kill us that way. Why did they just catch people this past week? 3 Chinese people, maybe 4, who were bringing in bad things into the country that were going to poison crops.
Yep, that's right.
Create ringworms and all this kind of stuff. People coming from Wuhan, I couldn't believe that. They were coming from Wuhan, going to the University of Michigan.
Yeah, with this
great
fungus
school,
or whatever they had.
What is going on at these schools with, that type of stuff going on? And Lord knows what happened to us during COVID that we're still paying for.
No doubt.
So China, who's not even talking to us about trade, they want us to get sick. They want to take us over. But people on the left-hand side, God bless them, they don't understand that apparently. That is not a concept that they understand. They must think that everybody loves us, we don't have enemies, and if we do convince them, well, they're just,
Well,
whatever.
I mean,
they don't have a good answer for
on
that.
paper, Jimmy, that's fine. On paper, that looks great. I can draw up a plan on paper and say, hey, this is how it should be, right? Nobody does this without asking permission, and you do this and you do that. But there's always going to be people that don't abide by that, right? And so on paper it looks good, but in reality it doesn't work like that. There are bad people, there are good people, there are criminals, and there are upright citizens, right? And so it doesn't work that way. We know that just from history. It doesn't work. So let's be more pragmatic and put something in play that actually works. I don't even know if that side of the fence, if they aren't really part of those communist parties where they're actually giving them the avenue to process all this material and to get people on one side of the fence or the other. I mean, it feels almost like, I don't know. I don't want to bring up the name of the organization Saturday.
I don't want to give them any publicity either. There are bad things out there. There are bad organizations that are mad at the U.S., bad at Americans, bad at, for whatever reason. And these nation states, of course, China, Russia, people like that, they will, or in fact, go back to Hitler.
Yeah.
and Mussolini. They had ambitions to take over the world.
Sure. There's always
And
that
and
crackpot.
apparently we had a lot of stupid before that happened. If you look at our history,
Mm-hmm.
Japan and their war machine, they underestimated them. Oh no, they're not going to do anything. And this drone deal really ought to scare the pants off of everybody. And this fighting among ourselves over this immigration, I don't know how we get this under control. I really don't, because I don't know how a place like Southern California, I don't know, here a federal judge just reject a motion to block deployment of troops in L.A. The president has every right in the world to do that.
Mm-hmm.
President Eisenhower did it in Arkansas when they were going to desegregate the schools.
I mean,
Governor
let's
out
talk
there
about
didn't
that.
want it.
I mean, you have some connections to the Selma March. I mean, there was.
I was there. I mean, I
Okay,
was a
so
kid.
yeah.
My brother was in the military, and he was federalized. President Kennedy federalized the Alabama National Guard. In fact, on June the 11th, 1963, the federalized Alabama National Guard, under the control of a general of the United States Army, they went to Tuscaloosa and made sure that the Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach would meet the governor of Alabama and force him to not stand in the schoolhouse door and allow 2 black students to register for college. They were federalized. They were showing the power. They were showing strength
Yeah.
of you can't do this because that's not how we roll in the United States. That's what the country had decided, and the president was enforcing the laws. You couldn't discriminate due to race. And then later, during the Selma to Montgomery March, when the state troopers did not want those people to march on a U.S. highway and cracked heads there as they came over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that was seen. And then there was a civil rights worker from Detroit, Viola Liuzzo, who was shot and killed by somebody, as a Yankee coming down to the South, as some Klansman or whoever they were, doing that. So that's when they called up the Alabama National Guard, federalized them, and they were guarding the last part of that Selma March. And yes, some of those Army people did not have bullets in their guns, but they had guns. And so that was one thing. But some people did. Some of the soldiers did have weapons that were armed. And those were the Special Forces members that rode on the front of Jeeps. And you had people in the U.S. Army that were prepared if things had gotten out of hand and a full riot somehow had happened at the end of the march, they were prepared to gas the people.
So
They had helicopters ready at Fort Benning to come over there and just neutralize everybody. Gas wouldn't kill them, but just knock out gas.
yeah.
So listen, there's been Bush did it during Rodney King, I think, and there's been a whole bunch of other times that National Guard
So why
against
aren't
the
we
governor's wishes in some cases, not in with the governor's begging in some cases.
So why are we forgetting the history? We've already
Because we don't have anybody with gray hair in the newsroom in America anymore. That we don't have. They've gotten rid of everybody. You've got newspapers that have a bunch of morons running them. And I mean, I saw a story on, just for example, because I was reading it, I saw it, and who knows about places I don't read. This was in the Tennessean.
Okay.
A story about Les Paul. This is one of the music capitals of the world.
Yeah.
Writes a story about Les Paul and spells it Less. They have no editors. They have nobody looking at this stuff. There's a group called the Red Clay Strays. It's kind of a complicated name, but they're an up-and-coming country group. They called them in the Tennessean the Red Clay Stays.
Oof.
They're writing stories with AI now. And you wouldn't believe some of the things. I mean, it's just the most word salad things going on that they're learning how to do good with the AI, but it's writing word salad.
Right. Right.
It's just ridiculous. And that's one thing. And someone said it, I don't know who it was. They said that if we don't have journalists in America, we're going to cease to be America. And I think that's right.
That's
You
fair.
have got to call the people on the right out when they do stupid stuff. You've got to call the people on the left out when they do stupid stuff. I mean, you've got to call the balls and strikes. You need an umpire in baseball. You need referees in football.
Yeah.
And journalists are supposed to do that. They're supposed to call the balls and the strikes.
Wow,
Like everything else that's screwed up, they're not doing that now. They're calling. It's like the referees are fixed. It's like, they're
Well,
putting the hand on the scale on the left-hand side.
yeah.
And then you've got some people on the right-hand side that are doing it, but the left far outweighs the right.
Do you think that's all? Do you think that's all intentional, or do you think that some of it's just?
No, I think it's just education. I think
yeah, I
that
think
a
you're
lot
right.
of
I think you're right.
I think it's just how it just came, that it's natural for someone who wants to be a reporter or somebody who goes up in that world of journalism. You want to expose bad things that goes on. You want to help people that don't have a voice have a voice. That's why a lot of people do it. You want to tell people what's going on so maybe they can vote more intelligently. That's why a lot of people want to be journalists. And you've got, they see a lot of stuff now. They choose not to see a lot of stuff. It
Yeah,
seems.
that's fair. Yeah.
And we've gotten the balls and strikes. The referees are out of whack. They need glasses.
I saw a headline. I thought it was interesting. There were two journalists, one from Australia, and I think one was from here,
got
the
shot.
state. Yeah, they got shot. One in the cheek and one in the leg. But one of the headlines was the police now shooting journalists.
Yeah, right.
And I thought to myself, how irresponsible is that as a headline? To just put out. I don't understand.
But look what a journalist is these days. It's anybody who says they are. A lot of these people
true.
are not credentialed. They're freelancers, and who knows who they are. They've got journalists tacked on their head. I mean, it's just, it's unfortunate that, at some point, even in musical chairs, around the mulberry bush, the monkey says at some point the music stops.
Right.
And there are only 5 chairs, but there's 7 people. Somebody's butt's going to be on the floor. And that's where we sort of are right now.
Oof.
We're doing musical chairs, and we're enforcing laws that haven't been enforced.
Yeah.
And we're doing things to try to get the house in order. Now, does Gavin Newsom like to? No, it makes him look bad because he should have done this himself.
Sure.
Does it make Karen Bass, who's so far over their head, in my opinion? I mean, what have they done for Pacific Palisades? How's that going?
Right.
And just everything else. I mean, the police chief of Los Angeles said that it was out of control, that they were outmanned and outgunned and everything else.
Yeah.
When a president sees that in a city, the governor sees that. The California Highway Patrol should have been down there like it was a prison riot, but I didn't see them.
What's
and then
interesting?
So the president sees that they're not coming because the governor doesn't want the state police to come. So that's why in Alabama, with the civil rights workers, the president called the National Guard, federalized them, so he could be in control to make sure that the civil rights marchers were protected, because he couldn't trust the local and the state people to do it. Simple as that. Same thing is going on today. Now, changing the scale a little bit and adding the Marines to this, now that's a whole another ball game. Marines they do guard the embassies around the world, but having active duty Marines doing things, and maybe they're going to guard the federal buildings or something like that, they can't be out doing other things, I don't think. But if you've got listen, this is the possibility. If you've got 21 million people you're trying to get out of the country, if that's truly what they're trying to do, you can't do it with just Merle and Earl down at the county police station. You've got to use federal resources, and sometimes that means federal troops. And if that's what he's getting ready to do, I'm not sure the country's quite ready for that. Some people are.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that, because that is a possibility. It may be even likely. But I don't think, when you look at Trump and this administration, but Trump specifically, I think when you look at him, he's a businessman first, right? We know that. Yep. So in order to be successful in any business, and you know this, I know this, we've done it, you have to be able to make a decision and stick to the decision and hope that it's the right decision. But if you wait too long to make a decision, you are in essence making a decision, right? If you don't do something about a problem you have, that's making a decision not to act. So in his case, and I'm not pro or con, I'm just saying he made a decision. He's acting so that he's not having to react down the road.
Well,
And-
here's a couple of things too about that. He is doing that, but right now he's got. Let's list the ways.
Yeah, sure.
We've got Ukraine and Russia
Yeah.
that could push us into a world war with very little trouble. If Russia goes nuke because all of a sudden the Ukrainians park a bunch of 18-wheelers near the Kremlin and send drones into the Kremlin, where the only resource Putin has is to go nuclear and wipe Ukraine off the face of the earth, as we would do if we were attacked. He's got to try to keep going with that and try to get going with that.
Yeah, there's got to be a resolution. I agree.
He's got to try to do it. You've got, God knows what North Korea is doing. You've got China that's working against us 16,000 different ways.
Yeah.
You've got the drug issues in the country. You've got a massive immigration Israel. Well, Israel and Gaza and all the Middle East and is Iran going nuke or not? And is Israel getting ready to go blow them off the face of the earth?
Right.
I mean, it just goes on. And you can go much deeper. You've got Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That's got all kinds of things going on over there with, bringing back the people that brought you bin Laden are all down in there in some of those countries. They've got rare earth minerals and all kinds of other things that are going on.
Right.
South Africa is in a mess. I could go around and really depress the
No,
crap
but I
out of
mean,
people.
you just
But
did
I mean,
it.
the president's got a lot of stuff going on. So this is the part where if you're President Trump, he has got a bunch of bobble-headed dolls around him.
Mm-hmm.
He has everybody that's nodding hinge heads.
Yeah, sure.
He's got nothing but hinge heads around him because he doesn't like people that I can tell that tell him, no, I don't think we want to do this. Like in the first administration, he had several people that he now thinks are the enemy because they didn't let him, or they convinced him where he shouldn't do it. He's got this guy, Stephen Miller, and then there's a whole bunch of others. But Stephen Miller is far, far, far right wing. Mm-hmm. I don't think Steve Bannon's in the party anymore. But
yeah, whatever happened to that guy? He just disappeared. I mean, I know he's still out there, but his prominence Steve Bannon just went away. I mean, he just went away.
ABC News has fired now veteran correspondent Terry Moran because of his late night tweet where he talked about Stephen Miller, and he did screw up. He said Stephen Miller, world-class haters, but he threw Trump into that too. And if you're a reporter, that's a whole nother subject. If you're a reporter and you're supposed to be calling balls and strikes, you're not supposed. And if you're Rachel Maddow, then it's okay. If you're Sean Hannity, it's okay to have an opinion.
That's what they do.
But if you're a balls and strikes person that's supposed to be covering the White House, you can't say that Stephen Miller is an all-class hater. I can, because it sure seems like I worry about some of the information that the president's getting. That's what concerns me. I think Trump's a smart guy. He's a charming person, but sometimes I think we're just putting sticks in the eyes of people for the purpose of sticks in the eyes of people.
Well,
like changing the names back on these forts. All right, the damage was done. Now we're going to go back and do it again. Then what's going to happen 4 or 5 years from now? They do it again. I mean, I mean, there's just so many things going on every day.
Do you think that's part of the
America's
plan?
Going to have. I think we're all going to have Trump fatigue if this keeps up for another 6 months or 8 months.
Well, I remember
that's not going to be pretty, because the country's got a lot of. We're all mad. I'm mad about these demonstrators. They make me very angry personally.
We had this on the first round, and I remember thinking to myself, if he gets reelected, are we going to see this again? And I remember sitting down with my wife, who is very mellow and pretty even-keeled, and she goes, yes, 100% we're going to have these again. And I said, really? Yeah. And she said, I'm afraid of that.
Well, we've got problems that have to get fixed.
Yes, we
And
do.
you
We
know,
do.
and like I got to go to the dentist tomorrow, and I don't want to go,
Yeah.
but you know,
Yeah, I
you
don't
got to
like
get,
going
you
either.
can't let your teeth go to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, that's right.
So there are things sometimes you got to get things fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we've got things that need to get fixed, and we've got a lot of people on the government dole that we can't afford to be carrying anymore. Look at our deficits that are way up there, and our spending is way out of control. And the only thing we can cut in some cases will be some of this Medicaid thing,
And
and
that's
that's going to be.
tough.
But
It's
a lot
tough.
of that is going to illegal people
Mm-hmm.
that are not citizens of the United States. We got to take care of the citizens of the United States first.
Yep. No, you're right. We
And
got
so that
to.
goes back to that controversial statement that he made, America first. I mean, I waved the American flag on the 4th of July. I think we should take care. I've always bitched at people about worrying about what's happening over in X country when we got people, in bad shape and that need so much in places like Appalachia
Mm-hmm.
or maybe on an Indian reservation, Native Americans in our country.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Why not help them with all the help that you can get them? Then we can go over and fly stuff now. It goes for the religious groups and everything else.
I'm with you on that 100%,
You know,
Jimmy. I've thought
help
that.
our people first, and then help everybody else. Help your own family first, and when that gets get the fire out in your house, and then we'll go worry about everybody else's house.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because how are you going
I
to
don't
help?
think.
How are you going to help somebody else if you're a disaster yourself?
You can't. You can't jump out in the water and try to save somebody
Right.
unless you've got the ability to do that, or have a life preserver on, or an air pack if you're a firefighter, or whatever.
Whatever. Yeah.
You can't just run in there, and yeah, it's brave to people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heroic when people die like that. But the bottom of the line is for us to be able to go out and have another day.
Perfect example of
live
that.
another day.
You flew all over the country. They get all out of the country, but I mean, they give you instructions. What do they give you the instructions with the oxygen? They don't say take the oxygen down and put it on your kid first, right? They say secure it on your own face so that you can breathe and function and help other people. It's right there in the instructions, right? It's a disaster happening right now. Here's how to best proceed. And I think people forget about that. I think people forget. And I think you're right. You got to clean up your own place first. You got to have it in order. And then you can go out and you can do all the good you can handle. And I believe
we've
that.
got a lot of, there's so much greatness in this country, and there's so much confusion, and I didn't even watch yesterday all that was going on. It's just too depressing
Yeah.
to watch it, actually.
Yeah, it can be.
But I mean, yeah, we need to do a lot about a lot.
Mm-hmm. And
But there's the right ways to do things and there's wrong ways to do things. I don't know if anyone has come up with what do you do about 21 million or so illegal people in the country that are draining us of our resources, of our limited money that we have. I think one thing that Trump big picture, what he's trying to do, he's trying to increase our revenue,
mm-hmm.
Where we can have more money coming into the till,
Yeah.
and then also not spend as much on certain things. And that's where that gets controversial. But again, the immigration deal, immigrants, this country wouldn't exist without immigration. We certainly wouldn't have been here this long.
Mm-hmm.
Immigrants are a vital part of our country. They have been. I wish we had a better government, Congress, where we could have made laws where people who are going to work can work, and go work in Nevada
Mm-hmm.
and clean the rooms or whatever. People that aren't educated, there are people to do that, and let them do it, but let them do it legally.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about sending all the money back home and all that other stuff, we just hadn't been smart
No.
about many of these problems, and it's come back to bite us on the butt.
Why haven't we heard from any legal immigrants? I mean, maybe we have, but I don't see it as mainstream.
You do a few.
But I wanna
there
hear
was
from
one
them.
whose store got burned up. I heard him.
Oh,
He was from
gosh.
somewhere. I don't remember where
Can
he
you
was. But
imagine?
he was the,
Yeah,
they went in there and tore his whole store up and burned it down. And he was an immigrant, legal one.
right,
And he just said, he didn't didn't understand.
right.
Why
right.
did they do that?
Right, exactly. I would venture to say that most of the legal immigration folks would be a little upset by the people who illegally obtained the right to live in this country.
Oh yeah, but there was great stories during one of those riots in California.
Mm-hmm.
There are different sections of town in these big cities, Chinatown,
Yeah,
Korea,
yeah,
all
yeah.
that. You didn't go into Koreatown cutting up because
Yeah.
they were out there with guns and on their buildings and everything. You weren't coming in there and tearing up stuff.
And that was those were full of immigrants, full of legal
Yep, and
immigrants.
that's what they were, and they were going to protect their own property.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get in, where we're shooting people and doing all.
No,
You
of course
This
not.
needs to stop. And again, how do you stop bullies? The only thing a bully understands is overwhelming power.
Mm-hmm.
And so you come in there with overwhelming power, and no one's stupid enough to go out there and do this. So you calm it down, and that's what, frankly, is what he did. He went in there with overwhelming power, 2,000 National Guard, and most of these people aren't stupid enough to go out there and throw rocks and do bad things when you've got, National Guardsmen and policemen and everything else that are ready to go. I mean, you try to catch people when they're down, not when they're up. And so this isn't going to last much longer.
Well, I hope
At
you're
least
right
in its
about
current-
that.
We can't. These people are stupid. They're going to be put in jail. They're going to be, put down, whatever they're going to do. But they're not going to let them run wild down there. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think we're at a point as a country where we've had enough of that. I really do. I think we.
But you've got these people that you brought up earlier that are stirring the pot.
Yeah,
to
I
have
know.
a Resistance
But-
Day, and like Trump has said, he said while they're having that military parade in Washington this weekend, which we'll find out if this is true, that they would, if they start doing bad things, they will be met with overwhelming force.
Wow.
So
well,
you don't want to see that. You don't want to see that happen.
I don't think
But
anybody
these people
does.
organizing this trouble. I would really want to check and see, who these people are.
I want to follow the money. I want to know where the money's coming from because this
Me
isn't
too.
when you organize something nationwide and you have kits for them. What's in your kit for your protest or whatever? Where's that money? That's millions of dollars. That isn't free. That's not free. So
You wonder, because yes, it's okay to have legal protests.
Yeah, I'm
and
good with it.
organize
I'm
but
good with it,
These
yeah.
professional rioters and rock throwers and all this stuff,
that's got to
I
go.
don't
That's
know.
got to go. It can't. It doesn't have a place. It maybe if that's where you came from, if that was a third world country and that's how you solved your issues, but we are not that. So
Yeah, you've seen that. And
Yeah.
so I don't know what they're supposed to do. What, the rubber bullet thing, I don't ever remember people firing rubber bullets for. Usually they were just pepper spraying people and
Yeah.
these pepper pellets that came out, and that was enough. I don't know, rubber bullets, that's amping things up a little bit. But
Yeah.
for them to have done that, it must have been really bad.
bad enough. Yeah. Some things to think about this week on Sweeping the Country. And Jimmy, always a
Yeah,
pleasure.
I don't think we enjoy talking about. I mean, I would love to be
No,
talking
but-
about something
no,
a
but
lot,
I'm-
but this is really an issue that's facing this country, and you can't be an ostrich and stick your head in the ground and ignore it. This is stuff that's going to require voting at some point.
Yeah.
It's going to require people who are citizens to be heard of whether they think this is okay or not okay, and what we're going to do about some of these issues. Nothing, or try to figure out a way how to make it legal without having to, imprison 21 million people, which seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
And where are you going to put these bad people? Okay, that's fine. They're bad. Now where are you going to go? Well, you can't take them down to the gulag in El Salvador. So I don't know what you do, and
I got an
we need
idea.
to-
I got an idea. This is totally facetious, but fence off California. Just fence it off.
I've heard that suggestion more than one time. I've heard it because
I
people
mean-
are just about ready to throw their hands up
Boy.
about parts of California.
There are certain parts, yes, indeed, and I have a lot of friends that are there, and I don't mean that literally, but
I do too, but
Doggone
it's
it.
a shake your head between the earthquake they had today,
Oh, Lord.
3.4.
isn't that true?
I think at Manhattan Beach,
Yeah.
which isn't much, but it still could be
It's
something else.
Yeah, it's
And
something.
then you've got, Marines that's learning how to arrest people. They're down at Seal Beach, and you've got,
Ugh.
in downtown Los Angeles, National Guardsmen guarding government buildings, and you've got, all these left-wing political people grandstanding.
It's
They don't
wild.
have a better idea. They just grandstand.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. You and I talked about that a little bit.
Come up with a better idea.
Yeah, come up with a
This-
plan, and instead of just hey, let's incite violence. Let's get these riots to make it feel like we're out of control, and that'll do it. That'll do it. They just have nothing
Resist,
else.
resist, resist.
Yes, I'm so tired.
How about solve, solve, solve? Oh, that'd be
Gosh,
good.
new slogan right there. I mean, I love it.
Solve. Not
Easy.
resist.
I love it, Jimmy. Until next week when we do this again, and hopefully we have better news to talk about.
Yes.
I'm Derek Walker. He is.
Jimmy Carter, good day.
Good day.